Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Connor. I'm a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, and a never Trump Republican who likes to comment on the news of the day and the political debate implosions and the alternative media scene for your entertainment. Basically, the way that I joked about it with my chat is that I wake up, I take psychic damage from what's going on in the world for your entertainment, and hopefully a few super chats. Today, I got something a little bit special for you. I got Krystal, who is a progressive commentator. I got Cenk Uygur, who is also a progressive, but has tried to make some inroads into the MAGA movement. And they're fighting about what's going on with MAGA, because obviously what's going on is that MAGA, the progressive haven't co-opted MAGA, the Make America Great Again movement, which is associated with Trump. Trump has used any progressive sympathies he's had as political momentum and a defensive shield against criticism. And so I think that's what the fight is largely going to be over. Of course, I could be wrong and there might be some more details to it, but I'll let the pundits take it away for us.
This fantasy land that Trump was like, oh, the left thinks Abrego Garcia, I've treated him wrong. I surrender, left.
The only time he has been constrained is through the left and liberals banding together and going through the court system and public pressure. That's it. That's all we've seen.
Is MAGA a fascist movement? Just give me a yes or no.
That's an absurd framing, Kyle. That's mainstream media framing.
You can't say that MAGA is fascist. You can't, wait. You really don't believe MAGA is fascist?
I am against Trump, totally, okay? But why do you love Trump will be the next question. Okay.
Did I ask that? Jake,
okay,
talk about a straw man. I mean, you're making up stuff I never said. Come
What's
on.
the point of coming on here if I can't answer your
Jake,
questions?
I'm giving you plenty of time to answer, brother. You're making up stuff about me. I didn't say that.
Okay,
so you want to talk about straw men? You're inventing
it's
things
a
on the
mistake
spot.
talking to you guys. It's a mistake.
Welcome, Cenk Uygur, the Young Turks. We appreciate you joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So, oh, you want to explain? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, Cenk reached out to Kyle and I this week and said, hey, I think we got some things to talk through. Can I, let's have a conversation. So we said, sure, let's do that. And this kind of follows on the heels of a discussion/debate that you and I had back in December, where, the launching point, and you can, correct me if you don't think that this is a fair characterization of this conversation, but the launching point was a tweet that you had put out expressing some optimism about the Trump administration. So we can put that tweet up on the screen from Cenk to refresh everybody's memory about where we started. So you said, in November 29th, 2024, I've been trying to figure out why I'm more optimistic now than I was before the election. Even though I was so against the guy who won, I know now MAGA is not my mortal enemy, neither is the extreme left. My mortal enemy is the establishment, and they have been defeated. So over the course of that conversation, you explained to me that the reason you felt optimistic was really two reasons. Number one, as you say there, the establishment was defeated. And number two, you felt that the elements of the populist right and the bros would hold Trump accountable. And it kind of built to this crescendo where he actually turned to the camera and said, listen, guys, in a little while, you're going to be able to say whether I was right or whether Krystal was right. Let's go ahead and play that portion as a refresher. That is element number two.
I want to address something to the audience. Can I?
Sure.
Is this my camera here? Okay, yeah. So right-wing populists, it is now your job to prove Krystal wrong.
Go out and do it, y'all.
So she doesn't believe you. And by the way, almost no one on the left, other than me and Anna, believe you guys that you actually want to cut the Pentagon and that you could pressure Elon Musk and Donald Trump to cut the Pentagon. So are you going to prove the left wrong, or are you going to prove them spectacularly right? Am I going to have to come on here and apologize to Krystal for ever believing in any right-wing populist and say, oh, I was a sucker. Those guys are liars. All they want to do was increase the Pentagon, have more wars, more corruption, and they never held Trump accountable. We waited 4 long years for them to hold him accountable, and all they did was kiss his ass and show that they don't really believe in freedom.
Listen, guys, I'm going to be a little bit mean. Grassroots Tetramon for the $20. Thank you, King, for kicking us off. The ingoodening of Anna Kasparian and Ezra Klein, and to a lesser degree Cenk, is a good thing. Well, I hope so. But listen, I'm just going to say it as I see it. Maybe Cenk has allergies or something, but I see the eyes as like a little bit red, a little bit glassy. I'm going to go ahead and play it again. And I'm not trying to like shit talk. Obviously there's some people in chat who still smoke pot or whatever, and they're adults. But he looks like a little glassy. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think he's drinking alcohol, because he doesn't sound like he's drinking alcohol. And I think you can smoke pot and still have a healthy chunk of your faculties. But what I think marijuana does, especially for me, is it kind of I don't smoke anymore. It kind of makes me really abstract. It kind of makes my imagination very vivid, and so I can play entire movies in my head using my imagination and a little bit of marijuana, and it feels very like real and tangible and all that kind of stuff. And so part of the reason why I don't smoke marijuana is, number one, it makes me paranoid. Number two, it makes my nerve pain worse, not better. Number three, I think that when it comes to marijuana, when it comes to Kyle Kalinske, and when it comes to Cenk Uygur, and when it comes to a lot of people who smoke pot, I feel like they think about politics all the time. And so they envision these hypothetical scenarios that play out in their brain, and they're so vivid that they borderline feel like revelation from the other side. But it's not based in reality. It's based in their fever dreams of what they want politics to be. And so to wrap up that little insight, I'm just going to say I'm probably not smoking pot routinely ever in the future, because I would never trust the visions I have from marijuana. Just wanted to share that thought as I saw his glassy eyes. Also, real quick, I think anybody should have been skeptical about whether or not the populist right was going to hold Trump to account.
For them to hold him accountable, and all they did was kiss his ass and show that they don't really believe in freedom. They said all this stuff about freedom, but they never meant it. They said all this stuff about drain the swamp, but they never meant it. They said all this anti-war stuff, but they never meant it. We're going to come back on here in 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, and we're going to keep doing a check.
So, Cenk, that was kind of the context of that discussion. And just for
here's the 1 year check, lol.
the audience and for you, since there's two of us and one of you, and we don't want to be like jumping on all over each other, and maybe Kyle and I have disagreements on things, I thought I would kind of handle the first 30 minutes more or less. Kyle would handle the second 30 minutes. You've got a engagement you've got to go to, hard out in an hour, so that's the amount of time that we have.
We could do this for 4 hours if we had the time.
I'm sure we could, and it would be painful for all involved. But in any case, we've got a hard out for Cenk. And
it might be painful for all involved, but it would probably be fire content.
1 hour, we want to be very respectful of his time. So with everything that's happened in Trump 2.0, do you still feel that original optimism that you expressed at the time, do you still feel that was well-founded?
Absolutely. And I'm part of the reason I wanted to come on is to see if you guys are on planet Earth or live in an alternate reality.
That's a rough start, Cenk. That's kind of rude.
So, and I'm not trying to be insulting. I'm trying to
you are.
Figure it out. I'm being genuine about it. And so, and Krystal, I went back and watched our conversation from back then.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you kept saying like things against Trump. And that's why I didn't even think it was a debate. It was a discussion, because I was like, yeah, I totally agree with you on Trump and the Republicans, et cetera. I was talking about the populist right and the independents that voted for Trump. The actual voters, and you saw it in that clip. I don't address Trump. I don't address any Republicans. I address the voters. So what has happened since then? Joe Rogan has come out against what Trump has done with Mahmoud Halil, with Abrego Garcia. Almost all of the MAGA hosts have come out against the war, ranging from Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon. Then you've got the politicians like Marjorie Taylor Greene. You've got Tim Dillon. I'm not sure you can name a right-wing MAGA host or independent host that's for the war in Iran. So, I'm genuinely curious. Like, are you guys not seeing that, or does that somehow magically not count?
So, Cenk, I have the same question as to whether or not you're on planet Earth, because first of all, let me ask you this question.
I hope she really doesn't walk past that, because I was ready to walk in here and say Cenk was a spurg who didn't know what he was talking about. But this actually is something that I've seen as well, where Rogan has been like, well, if first off, I think Rogan's like an idiot and a dupe. So I'm not, no offense to Joe Rogan, would love to talk to him sometime. But him saying that, oh, yeah, like if they would have said that we were going to mass deport people from Home Depot and we were going to chase down moms and in elementary school parking lots, then nobody would have voted for this. And it's like, bro, you don't even know your own base. And you were basically like a useful idiot for these people. That's what I would tell Rogan. But I do applaud Rogan in the fact that he has spoken out about Khalil. He has spoken out about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He has spoken about the bombing in Iran, although I probably have a more neocon perspective on it. So I'm going to give him criticism for going against his audience once he's been a useful idiot and therefore is taking flack for it. Same thing with Thomas Massey. Same thing with Rand Paul. Same thing with, I'm trying to think of who else. But effectively, like there's plenty of people who have been criticizing all of these issues from a more libertarian, conservatarian lens. And so Cenk says, I was never talking about Trump. I think Trump's a stupid asshole who's going to do messed up stuff. I'm talking about the fact that his base, who wanted these things, is rebelling against Trump. So if Krystal sidesteps that, I'm actually going to see that as kind of like bad faith on her end.
Do you think that Trump 2.0 is better or worse than Trump 1.0?
Trump is
that wasn't his point. That wasn't his point at all. So she sidestepped the point. Trump 2.0, worse or better? I think everybody has acknowledged that it's worse.
irrelevant.
No, he's not irrelevant because I'll tell you why. Here's why. You expressed optimism about how all this would go. And the reason you were optimistic is because, hold on. No, we just saw your tweet, okay? The reason you were optimistic
I can explain the tweet.
Is because you thought these various groups and influencers would hold him accountable. So did they constrain his behavior, for example, when Elon Musk was running around with a chainsaw, slashing Social Security and gutting the federal government and gutting the CFPB? No, we didn't. In fact, we saw Joe Rogan host Elon Musk, not to mention Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Andreessen, to make the case for those things, okay? No accountability there. Did we see them constrain his behavior and hold him accountable when he launched a crypto shitcoin, the most corrupt?
Okay. Krystal's winning me back over. That crypto shitcoin, I'm not going to lie. That was one of the wildest things that the Trump admin ever did. For those of you who don't know, there's probably some older viewers who watch this show on occasion, although I understand it's quite vulgar, so you might not enjoy it as much. So crypto is effectively digital money. People create digital currencies online, and similar to real currency, they're only as valuable as however many people are investing in them. So if you have, I don't know, the Dogecoin and only 6 people invest, well, then that's only going to be worth a few cents. Whereas if you have something like Bitcoin, where you have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people invested into it, that can be worth like $2,500 or now like $10,000 or $50,000 per Bitcoin. And so it's basically digital currency. Well, the Trump admin launched a digital currency and they did what's called a rug pull. It's very common in the industry, where people will buy as an initial surge of interest in the coin, and then they'll sell it within 24 to 48 hours in order to like peak at its maximal value and make the most amount of money possible. But what ends up happening is rubes who genuinely believe in the currency and want to hold on to it, they will buy it at a high dollar amount, but then they'll tank in value by 90%. And Melania did that. Trump did that. I think they have like a combo like MAGA coin. And so effectively the people who are invested in these coins, they probably rode the 90% wave, sold at the peak, and then they held on to a minimal amount so they can't be accused of fraud. But it's effectively fraud. So yeah, Krystal bringing that up and how people didn't call it out as aggressively, I think is a valid point. Good job, Krystal. You're winning me back.
Scheme in American history, most likely. No, he did it. He's faced no accountability for that. You mentioned some dissent from Rogan on the kidnapping of college students off of college campuses. Is it the right that organized in opposition to that? No, it's the left and it's liberals.
Good morning, Bo.
Only time that Trump's actions have been constrained at all in this Trump 2.0 era, which is vastly worse than I even expected when you and I had that conversation. I mean, we've got men in hundreds of people in a concentration camp. I didn't see any accountability from the right on that. I don't see any accountability from the right on an American city that is right now under invasion by our own troops, Marines on the ground in the city of LA. No, I don't see any accountability there. I see an administration that, as I predicted, the guardrails are completely off And the only places where he has been constrained at all is when the left and liberals organized against Elon Musk, Tesla protests, showing up at town halls, etc., made him toxic. He had to be turfed out of the administration. And in the context of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, when you had mass left liberal resistance, even pushing Democratic leaders who were lame and weak to do something, Chris Van Hollen goes down to El Salvador, and the administration did something they did not want to do, which was to bring him back. That is the only time this administration has been constrained. It has not.
I'm going to go ahead and accept Crystal's argument. And I felt like the initial could be bad faith, quote unquote. I don't necessarily think these positions are in contradiction, though. Cenk can be happy that some MAGA supporters are breaking with Trump on issues of importance. But I think Krystal is correct that it's a lib/left-wing alliance that's actually putting Trump's feet to the fire in reference to the actual issues. I think that's descriptively true. And so the brunch libs and the progressives have been infinitely more effective than dissident MAGA.
And had nothing to do with the right, had everything to do with liberals and the left organizing against him.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So you asked about 12 questions.
I don't know why that's hilarious. Also, it wasn't 12 questions. It was like 12 statements.
Would love the time to answer it, but you didn't actually answer my question. Do you see a massive MAGA revolt against the war? And I'm being genuine. It's a literal question. Or do you just not see it?
Dank Brandon says, I want the pot you think pot is. Well, maybe it's just my brain then. Maybe I'm like schizotypal. Maybe I just have a delusional imagination that's very powerful that marijuana just enhances, that I'm not interested in fueling.
Cenk, here's what I can tell you. Okay, Charlie Kirk, your buddy, he has already,
not my buddy.
He has
Crystal,
already gone.
That.
He has
That's
already
a ridiculous
gone.
Thing to say.
He's already gone from. He's already gone from being critical of the Iran war to, guess what? He got a call from the White House, and now what he's saying? What's he saying? Oh, I trust Trump. Trump is the man for this moment. I know he's going to make the right decision.
The exact
Steve
quote
Bannon.
is.
Go
Can I
ahead.
give the exact quote?
Yeah.
This is from Charlie Kirk. Quote: "We must trust Trump in this situation." Go ahead with Steve Bannon.
Steve Bannon. Hold on. Steve Bannon. Put up element number 4. This is the Financial Times today. Steve Bannon says, if the president, as commander-in-chief, makes a decision to do this, the MAGA movement, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Matt Gaetzes, we will fight it up till the end. But if he has more intelligence and makes that case to the American people, the MAGA movement will support President Trump. When Trump says that he gets to define what America first is, he's right about that. And so when you have Bannon, who also was critical of Elon Musk originally and got a call from the White House and said, cut it out, and he bent the knee, these people time and time again, Cenk, all they do is ultimately when Trump makes the decision, they bend the knee. We are already far enough into this administration to know there has been no constraint on his action that has come from the right, none. And we're in a war with Iran. Okay. We are already in a war with Iran. They didn't constrain him here. He's doing whatever the hell he wants to do.
Okay. So you guys just spoke for like 8 minutes doing a straw man. Okay. So you make it sound, and this is what's so harmful. You guys make it sound like I'm pro-Trump, and I think that MAGA is just a bunch of angels who are secretly left-wing, and they're going to magically agree with us on every issue. And the minute that Trump does something wrong, they're going to all push back 100%. And that's what I believed. I believed in rainbows and unicorns. Of course not, Krystal. Of course not. Well, you're trying to move them. Moving the other side is super hard. And so when you see anything where they actually agree with us, you have to encourage that. So when you say all the things that you said, is Trump a bad guy? Of course, of course. So
of course, that's one of the things that Cenk is famous for. I'm going to check in with chat just because, I parasocially love you guys and I like reading what you guys have to say while we're listening to content. So a lot of people really did not like my marijuana take. That's totally fine. Maybe I just have maybe I am 3,000 IQ and you guys are just 2,000 IQ. Maybe higher IQ brains just interact with THC differently. I'm just telling you that when I take THC, I'm very imaginative and creative, and my imagination kind of comes. Not only does it come to life because I'm normally a very imaginative person, but they're like visions borderline. I get like sucked into my own thoughts and sucked into my own visions. Everything feels so much more profound. And so when I get sucked into those things, when I sober up again, I can be like, wow, that really wasn't as profound as I thought it was. So what I'm saying is, if Kyle is on Kratom, and if Anna is smoking pot, and if Cenk is doing edibles because I know that's just a rumor that chat said, but if Cenk is doing edibles but not smoking, then, you know, they can have the same issues. I'm not saying they do have the same issues. As a matter of fact, I feel like Cenk's line of argumentation is infinitely harder to argue with than the straw man. The straw man is that Cenk just believed that the right wing was going to become this like magical ally to hold Trump accountable to the good parts of his agenda. That's the straw man of the argument. But Cenk was just saying, like, I'm trying to reach out to right wing people who are willing to fight for America to be more pacifistic on the world stage, which I disagree with, but that's okay. America to be, I don't even know what else he wants. What else does he want? Respect for civil rights and civil liberties. That's pretty much it. Those are the two that are brought up, is Mahmoud Khalil, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and the bombing of Iran. And he has seen the right wing rebelling on that. And so he's praising the people who have rebelled. I think that's an okay pragmatic position. I think one of the things that some of my MAGA viewers watch or get frustrated with me is that I might be too mean to MAGA, which I know the rest of chat doesn't agree with at all. But the reason why I'm so mean to MAGA is because I see all the damage that Trump is doing. So I know that there's good MAGA supporters. My dad does criticize Trump, but he does so in such a way that I feel like it's toothless. No offense, Dad. I love you. But ultimately, he'll be like, yeah, Trump does this bad, this thing's bad, and this thing's bad. But realistically, the Democrats are doing this, this, and this, and that's way worse. And then I'm like, yeah, but he killed 250,000 people. And he's like, yeah, but they're Africans, so meh. That's a little bit of a straw man, but, you know, let's face it, that's pretty much what he said. Then when it comes to, like I said, I have a father-in-law who I respect and love a lot, who is a fundamentally good human being. He has dedicated his life to helping other people within his community. He wakes up, he eats, breathes, and sleeps on like helping people. That's what he does day in and day out. And even he finds a way to contort himself into a pretzel in order to support Trump. So I know that there's good MAGA people, but I just think they're like wrong or self-deluded. Frustrating. Very frustrating. John says, I showed my MAGA friends the shitcoin and said he did a rug pull and they haven't talked to me since. Yup. Well, when people are confronted with something that they can't defend about Trump, they usually get frustrated and angry. Gen X says Hawk Tua 2.0. Indeed. Randy Chang says marketplace of shitty hot takes. Well, welcome to the stream, brother. Biz D says the shitcoin doesn't faze me. It would be weirder if Trump didn't launch one. Well, yeah, but that's because he's like a grifting sociopath. Bohr says, quote unquote, kidnapping. Yeah, I get it. They're being hyperbolic, but still, like, I don't know, detaining someone who hasn't committed a crime, who has a stay order against going to a country, and then deporting him to their version of Guantanamo Bay without due process is kind of fucked up. Let's just admit it. It's kind of fucked up. Now, the dude, you know, allegedly beat his wife and has tattoos that might associate with a gang. So do we ultimately care at the end of the day? Yes, we do care because we care about due process. Razzle Smasher says, I can find a lot of agreement and common ground with Krystal and Kyle on domestic Trump stuff, but their foreign policy takes are borderline insane. Yes. Bold Media says Trump created a meme coin will be a line taught to kids in history in 50 years, hopefully. Chris, you have a lot of optimism about what the history books will remember. I think they're totally going to skip that and sweep that. Christian Blair says, damn, everyone weaponizing the word invasion. True. Gen X says the rug pull part sucked, but the real issue is that foreign governments are still buying millions of his crypto to get sanctions lifted and stuff. Oh, yeah, it's totally money laundering. 100%. That's like the thing, man. I get pissed off at Democrats, libs, and progressives when they're sweeping for what Hunter Biden did, but I can understand how they can look at what Hunter Biden did and then immediately behind me, it's like, look at me, brother. Have you guys ever seen that meme? I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you this meme. It's critical to the stream. Look at me, brother. Meme. So this is me, okay? This is me. And you guys are like, well, I like you, but I'm kind of scared of that guy. And this is MAGA. And I'm like, I don't even know that guy. And he's like, look at me, brother. Because this is 60 to 70% of the Republican Party. And effectively add in this panel that I'm criticizing you guys about Hunter Biden. And then immediately behind me, where I'm like, I don't even know that guy, is Donald Trump doing the meme coin, the shit coin, having Jared Kushner running a $2 billion Saudi sovereign wealth fund. And also, what's the other one? Oh, and then money laundering through shit coins. So just have that be this panel, and you guys will know exactly what's going on. For the sake of momentum, for the VODlings, somebody suggested that I call my VOD viewers VODlings, and I like it. So for the VODlings, I'm going to continue to play, but I will be reading your chats. Don't worry.
If you're listening out here, guys, the framing of all of this is totally wrong. Like, we're having a conversation. Do you think Trump's a bad? Of course I think Trump's a bad guy. He's totally authoritarian. That's why I voted against him. That's why I worked so hard against him. So even the framing makes me like sound defensive when you guys started with a premise that's out in la-la land. We totally oppose Trump. So now the second part of the premise that's totally wrong is, do I think that MAGA is going to revolt on every issue against Trump from day one? Why? Why would they? They love Trump. Of course not. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for, is there one or two issues where there is actual agreement? And can we take that agreement and do something interesting to restrain Trump?
He's making the argument that the populist horseshoe could work together.
Those issues. So when you talk about immigration,
and so when has that worked?
Okay, hold on. Well, we're in the middle of it right now. So I'll tell you what
we're at war with Iran, Cenk. Hate to break it to you. We're at war with Iran. It didn't.
Nah, it could be way worse. These people. Sorry, we'll do a geopolitical rant momentarily. Let's let them expand the conversation a bit.
Okay. So Krystal, let me finish. So when you talk about immigration and all the things that he's terrible on, I know what MAGA's movable on or not. I talk about it on the Young Turks all the time. If you think you're going to move them on immigration, you are nuts. They're not going to move an inch on immigration. So I fight him tooth and nail on that dungeon in El Salvador that they're sending people to, the Marines in the streets. Now, there's some issues like immigration where they haven't moved an inch and they never will move an inch, right? Mm-hmm. There's some issues like the Marines in the streets where a smattering of them are like, this is a little uncomfortable. It feels a little unconstitutional. It doesn't feel quite right. Those libertarian wing, remember guys, this is super important. There's 77 million people that voted for Trump, right? If you treat them all the same, you will not be able to win elections. Why is winning elections important? Because that is how you take power away from Trump.
In a liberal democracy. Anyways, let's address this chat. Well, actually, let's do the geopolitics first, and then we'll do the chat. I'm going to go full screen so you guys know that I'm serious. Look at me. This is my serious face, okay? My lighting is terrible again. Anyways, this is my serious face. We are not at war with Iran. This is not Iraq 2.0 yet. It could be. Bombing the sites could become Iraq War 2.0, but what would need to happen is we would need to have bombed the nuclear sites. Then Iran would need to strike back by closing the Strait of Hormuz and then bombing a bunch of U.S. naval ships, and then probably doing a 9/11 style terror attack that kills a few thousand American civilians. And then we would use that as a casus belli in order to launch Iraq War 2.0. But unless a few thousand, we could probably lose, a few hundred like sailors, airmen, and Marines in the Red Sea crisis and the potential Strait of Hormuz crisis, and we still wouldn't launch a ground invasion of Iran. So, and by the way, I'm so sick I'm like sick to death. Like I want to throw up when all of these progressives in like Shoe on Head and her husband and the Krystal Ball and Kyle Kulinski and all these people are like, oh, well, we're just realistically backing Israel and we don't really have any business being involved in the Middle East and North Africa anyways. Nothing has changed in the past 50 years, okay? Nothing's changed in the past 80 years. Guess where 2/3 of the world's petroleum is, and guess what the lifeblood of civilized society is? The lifeblood of civilized society is petroleum, and 2/3 of the world's proven oil reserves are in the Gulf, in Saudi Arabia, and in Iran. It matters who controls the Gulf states and their petroleum production, and who controls Iran matters. And so suck it the fuck up. We're going to be involved in Middle East and North Africa. Israel could be nuked off of the map tomorrow, and we're still going to be involved in the Middle East and North Africa. TL1524 says, I'm sorry, Connor, what? Name me one policy the No Kings protest actually influenced. That's such crap. TL1524, your question is so silly, and I love you because I've seen you before in this chat, so I'm going to be very nice. I'm going to play with kids' gloves, okay? Your comment is so silly that I have to address it in full. Name me one policy the No Kings protests actually influenced. I have to cuss. Why the fuck would one day of protest change legislation? Do you think protesters do legislation? What are you talking about? Legislation is done by legislators, senators, and congressmen. Is that the same thing as a protest? Are you high? So let me explain what the No Kings protest actually accomplished. Well, actually, hold on. Let me explain something else first. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the only reason why you know that is because a bunch of libs and progressives on social media and legacy media news stuff were freaking out about it for months. That's the only reason why you know about it. And then if a judge had said, hey, Trump admin needs to bring this guy back, and then the Trump admin said buzz off, and there was no media attention, there was no social media attention, then that would have died overnight. The only reason why Kilmar Abrego Garcia was brought back to face due process is because of libs and progressives freaking out in both legacy media and social media. So yeah, it's the libs and progressives who made that happen. When it comes to Mahmoud Khalil, it's the same thing. If there was no media pressure or no social media pressure, then that dude would have been deported overnight. But what happened is the libs and progressives, legislators and protesters freaked out about the lack of due process in reference to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and they freaked out about having the First Amendment protections that are allegedly extended to all of the people within the United States of America who are green card holders, although I think it's arguable. They argued that in court. And guess what? They won in reference to Mahmoud Khalil and a sustained social media campaign. So you thinking that the bar of evaluating liberal and progressive political effectiveness is whether or not a protest leads to legislation is one of the weirdest comments you could have possibly made in my chat. And by the way, just to say what the No Kings protest, quote unquote, accomplished, it didn't accomplish anything in and of itself. But what it did do is it set the bar for enough people to get pissed off and motivated for the midterms. So TL, my prediction is if the economy comes back roaring and if Iran stabilizes, then Trump will probably lose in the midterms because that normally happens anyways. But it'll, basically like he'll survive relatively intact. However, if he's doing his crazy economic bullshit with the tariffs and the economy is still shaky, and if the Iran war drags on and the Ukraine war drags on, he's going to get his shit kicked in the midterms. So I have no idea what your comment, like, dude, your comment makes no sense whatsoever. In what world would a single day protest result in legislation? I actually have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
Away from the Republicans. So if you treat all 77 million as hardcore MAGA, you're going to push them away and they're going to vote against you. You can say, oh, no, but it makes me feel better. I have emotional release and my audience likes me more because I seem like I'm tougher on Trump. I was so mean to him. Yeah, but did that persuade anybody? I called all of his voters fascists. Yes, but did that persuade anyone? You're trying to persuade the people in the middle to come to your side. So what are the issues where we've got a fighter's chance? War. Okay. So now, do I think that on day one, they were all going to flip and then act and be successful in stopping all of the establishment, all the neocons? And by the way, were we successful? We were not successful in stopping any of them during Biden or any other Democratic administration either, right? So now there's a giant full-blown revolt from MAGA against this war. Now, if you're saying, no, I don't see Tucker Carlson, Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Posobiec, Cernovich, Candace, et cetera, all the
who are all schizophrenics, by the way. If they're all on a team and they're with you, then you're schizophrenic.
opposed to the war. But you might not, because a lot of people watch programming that honestly just kind of gives them a misleading sense of what's happening.
Did you see Tucker, Trump saying, Tucker called me to apologize. He said he went too far. Did you see Steve Bannon saying, we're all going to fall in line ultimately? So I'm not talking about, hold on.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the however many million Americans voted for Trump, some of whom are hardcore MAGA, and you will never move them. And I guarantee you, the moment that Trump says, this is the policy, they're going to say, you're right, sir, this is the policy, this is brilliant, and I am on board. Are there independents that can are there independents that can be moved? Yes. There are two separate questions here. Okay. Number one is we are in hell right now. Like the level of damage that has been done to this country, done to the world from Trump 2.0 already is astounding. So the number one thing is triage, right? How do we stop?
That's what I'm doing.
How do we stop as much damage as we can? And the track record thus far in the Trump administration is the only time he has been constrained is through the left and liberals banding together and going through the court system and public pressure. That's it. That's all we.
He's about to freak out, but I don't know how they're incorrect. It hasn't been right-wingers freaking out about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. It hasn't been right-wingers freaking out about Mahmoud Khalil. As a matter of fact, for me, I would deport Mahmoud Khalil if I could. Then it hasn't been the right wing freaking out about due process concerns. It hasn't been the right wing freaking out about mass deportations. It hasn't been the right wing freaking out about Iran, right? The closest thing that they got was freaking out about Iran. That's the closest thing they got to a MAGA rebellion. So I just think Krystal's fundamentally correct. Checking in with chat, though, because I love you guys. There is a comment here. Gen X says, what the F is Elon up to? He hasn't forced any tweets on my timeline in days, maybe a week. No opinion on Iran. Yeah, he's probably realized that he did so much damage to his businesses by associating so heavily with Trump 2.0 that he's realistically just in a K-hole in one of his mansions, which good for him. If I was a billionaire, I'd be in a K-hole in a mansion, designing rockets and shit. Chamorro Guy says, what sci-fi would you most want to live in and what planet city would you pick? Chamorro, I would be a Martian in The Expanse. I would be a part of the Martian Marine Corps, the MMC. If you have not seen the TV show The Expanse, it's so good. It's so good. Like phenomenal. Like the first 3 or 4 seasons are fantastic. They lost me for seasons 5 and 6, or maybe it was 3 and 4, I forget. But then it comes back so hard in the last season. Honestly, I love The Expanse. I hate all the alien gimmicks in season 3 and 4. To me, the aliens were the least interesting part of The Expanse. The hard military sci-fi and the hard politics sci-fi was awesome. Sorry, Diet Coke burp. First Wave says, I don't really like this debate style where people just exchange several minute-long diatribes. If someone feels you have misrepresented their position, you should sort that out before moving on. Yeah. Of course. Of course. Kay says, Connor, I totally agree with you on weed. Most people who defend it smoke it and aren't totally objective. Yeah, it's okay for us to have potheads. You know, I'm just an imaginative person. If it doesn't affect you that way, good for you. You might be coping, but it is what it is. Randy Chang says, imagine trying to get a giggle fit counterpoints to pass the joint. I don't really have giggle fits. I kind of just stare off in the distance and I'm like, yeah. Shadow 2 Bravo says, I'm Team Connor's dad. Of course you are. Bull Media Steel Bragan says, Connor Senior, Toothless MAGA, Connor Anti-MAGA, Connor's Boys Pro MAGA. Yeah, probably. It probably skips a generation. The King Slime says, I see MAGA people as no better than brown shirts. Well, I think you have to separate the people from the politicians. You know, it would be like German civilians who support Hitler versus the brown shirts versus the SS versus the Gestapo versus the Nazi party members. Like, you should, you know, and I'm not saying that they're all Nazis or identical to Nazis in impact, but I'm just saying, like, you gotta differentiate these people because plurality of tactics, right? You have to use rhetoric with some, harsh language with others, you know, plurality of tactics. Rob says, guess who's back again? Rob is back. Have a Zen. Nice. All right, 2 more, then we'll get back into it. Bud123 says, there are MAGA supporters that are total isolationists that oppose Trump bombing Iran and agree with and support Thomas Massie over Trump. Yep. First Wave says, I understand why people don't talk about this more because the voters don't give a fudge, but the Trump admin causing the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people for no reason at all is monstrous. I agree. I agree. I can't believe more people aren't freaking out about it. And then I lied because Sacred Snow said something. Sacred Snow says, the issue I have with Cenk's charity is that it's very enabling. I do think we need to be open and accepting to bring them back, but they repeatedly take advantage of that to sweep for Trump's worst atrocities. January 6th is normalized now. What the fuck? Like, how the fudge are we supposed to be praising them for being anti-war when let's face it, the majority opposition is from pro-Russian Tucker Carlson, for example. Yeah, it's like a false anti-war sentiment because it's realistically just pro-Russian isolationism. I agree. This is why I think populism is a brain disease, but you know, that's okay. Quick shill time. Like the stream if you haven't liked the stream. We got 93 people in the chat, which is awesome. I love that we're pushing past 100 on this channel on Valor Media. That's totally dope. Also, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Awesome day yesterday. Not only did we get a substantive amount of financial support on the Counterpoints channel, but we also hit 300 live viewers. That's a channel peak. That's a channel peak. And 300, if we can get up to 300 and keep 300, that's going to turn into 500. And 500 is going to turn into 1,000. And 1,000 is going to turn into 2,000. And then I love all of you guys. I don't need you to all super chat and all do this, that, the other. Just off of AdSense and revenue, that's going to be a 6-figure income, which means that I'm going to pay my bills. And then we're going to do fun stuff together, like disaster relief. Anyways, back to the content.
We've seen in this administration. The other question is, how do you win elections? So go ahead and address that, and we can talk about the election piece. But real quick, before you get in, you know, as to the earnestness of this MAGA anti-war movement, put element number 3 up on the screen. Do you know? Tell me, how many Republicans have signed on to the War Powers Resolution? Is Marjorie Taylor Greene? No. Is Lauren Boebert there? No. 1, Thomas Massie, a libertarian who is, you know, ideologically consistent, kind of similar ideologically to Dave Smith. Every other person here is a Democrat. So to the earnestness of this anti-war MAGA coalition and their commitment to blocking war with Iran, here is where the rubber meets the road. You have one Republican who is already at odds with Trump, who is willing to put his name on this War Powers resolution. That's it.
So, Krystal, look, I know you don't mean it, but you keep conflating 2 things. The Republican politicians, including Trump, and the Republican voters, or the people who voted for Trump, okay? So are the Republican politicians corrupt? Of course they're corrupt. Are they going to say, hey, Israel, I'll be your bitch, and I'll do whatever the hell you want me to do?
Oof.
Of course they are. They're completely owned by Israel.
Of course.
Okay.
You, baby.
So AIPAC, et cetera, the warmongers, by the way, let's be honest, is more than half the Democratic Party totally owned by AIPAC. Yes. Right. So I know. Oh my God. Oh no, you can't be honest. You have to just say the other side is terrible and our side is angels. No, I'm not going to play that.
Would you rather be on the side of the 37 who signed onto the War Powers Resolution,
Krystal,
or the
I am
1?
On the side of the 37. Everything you frame is a straw man. I am on the side of the 37. In fact, Ro Khanna is my top ally. Bernie Sanders, Ro Khanna and I had.
I need to mute myself and eat, but I'm going to continue listening. I promise I haven't forgotten anyone.
The same exact strategy that you criticized in November when we talked.
That's not true.
You literally put me, and Kyle did the same thing. You guys put me in the same bucket as Bernie and Ro, reaching out to see if we can find agreement on the right.
But what else has Bernie done? What else has Bernie done that has been profoundly impactful? The anti-oligarch, the Fight Oligarchy tour, which was an effort to bind together the left and the liberals to protest and to resist this administration, and that has been profoundly more impactful.
You're having a conversation with a person who isn't here.
Did the Pentagon budget get cut? Just tell me that. What's the Pentagon budget? Did it get cut?
You've now asked me 28 questions.
Did Don Jr. Did he do whatever with the generals? Did that work out?
All right, guys, look, I came on here because, look, you're generally fair. So you asked me 28 questions, and then let me answer them. So, and stop framing it as if I'm a different person. You keep making all these assumptions about who I am. Oh, are you on the Republican side or the Democratic side?
I'm literally citing things that you said, Cenk. Like, I played your clip of what you said.
Christ, man.
Turn to the camera.
Okay,
hey,
I'm
tell me
right
if I'm
here,
wrong.
Crystal,
Specifically,
I'm right here. I'm right here. Can I talk for myself instead of you?
You specifically held on the Pentagon budget.
Yeah, Krystal is pressing in order to get him to freak out, which is like, I do view this as kind of bad faith. Like when somebody's saying like, hey, can I have some time to talk? And then you just keep yapping every time they open their mouth. I do feel that like you're trying to spin them up in order to get them pissed off.
At this point, borderline lying about me in every framing of every question. Can I
How am I lying?
A human being named
How am I lying? Tell me.
I appreciate the pressure, but she's trying to get him to freak out.
I'm lying.
Questions instead of you framing
Tell me how I'm lying,
as a
Cenk.
person that doesn't exist.
Cenk,
okay?
I played the clip of you talking, so tell me how I'm lying.
I'm going to say it. This is my least favorite thing about online politics, okay? Because you guys all have 3,000 IQ. You are all brilliant, well-endowed human beings who have an immaculate taste in content. That's why you're here, is because you're brilliant, you're well-endowed, you have 3,000 IQ. Okay? So you listen to the words that I'm saying, and not just the emotion with which I convey it. And so these words play in your brain and they create images or concepts that you are capable of tracking. And then these complex concepts allow you to gain insight into politics. This is how you and I communicate because you guys are all beautiful people. I would say 70% of online politics is emotion. And so they don't actually pay attention to the words. They're not paying attention to the concepts that are being built in their mind. They pay attention to the way that people are saying things. And so what they see is Crystal Ball being a little paternalistic, being a little condescending, and being a little smug, but also having like a decent chunk of points for her political tribe, where she's saying that it's the right wing that's not holding Trump to account. And then they see Cenk about to freak out in Spurg because he feels like he's being strawmanned. But they're not paying attention to what's actually being said. I do, because I take notes. Cenk said that when he was expressing optimism, he was hoping to build inroads with the populist right. And he does praise the MAGA rebels who are criticizing the admin about Mahmoud Khalil, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and bombing Iran. And he does praise people who I think are schizophrenics. And I do think it's politically naive, but he does praise MTG, Bannon, Tucker Carlson, etc. when they broke with the Trump cult, because that's going to cost them. There will be people who no longer pay attention to MTG, who no longer pay attention to Tucker Carlson, who no longer pay attention to Thomas Massey, because they're breaking with the cult. That's what he's saying, or at least that's what he's saying in this conversation. Crystal is appealing to pragmatism, though, where she's saying like, okay, but to what end? Because if anything, these rebellions have been like feckless and haven't achieved anything. And the only thing that's been achieved is libs and leftists freaking the fuck out. So I appreciate her pressure, but I do think she's being unfair. First Wave says, do you think the growing importance of solar and batteries will decrease the relative geopolitical importance of the Gulf? Nope. And the reason why is because we can build thorium reactors. We can build solar. We can build alternative. We can build wind. and we can run 70% of what we have off of electricity, and that will be good. But there is going to be a need for petroleum just because it's hard to condense energy into such a small thing. There really is not a replacement for petroleum for some equipment, in my opinion. Justin says Anna Kasparian is a groipette now. That's crazy. Bull Media says it will be, but oil and natural gas have uses outside of energy, so not that much importance will be lost. Yeah, there's still going to be things that we need it for. Short Stack Goblin says Connor, or Connor. It's the first one. CONOR is how you spell it. No doxing, please. ACAB Batasui says we haven't hit peak oil yet, but the world consumes more oil every year. Yeah, I mean, we obviously need to switch off, and I think I want to talk to Gen X about decarbonization and carbon capture eventually, because honestly, I think that's like wildly important for the future of the planet. Afro Jew says, oh, right, because being pro-Ukraine is only a neocon position. Shake my head. Well, right, but it kind of is. Even if most liberals and progressives support Ukraine, supporting liberal democracies all over the world and shifts towards republicanism is a neoconservative philosophical tenet. That's like the foundation of neoconservatism, is supporting mixed economy capitalist representative democracies over the world is the basis of neoconservatism. Si se puede says, isn't it weird how Iran is portrayed as the belligerent / aggressive nation, and yet they have twice de-escalated tensions with us last week and after Soleimani was killed? Yeah, but, you know, maybe they should just develop a civilian nuclear program and then shut the fuck up. Maybe they could do that. First Wave says, do you think there's any chance of the Democrats winning the Senate? I think it's basically impossible, even if everything goes wrong for Trump. I don't know. I'd have to look at who's vulnerable and who isn't. Gen X says, shit, I just checked Elon's account and he didn't opine on Iran at all, just robo-taxi. Yeah, I'm telling you, he's chilling out because he took such a big hit being a part of the Trump admin. Sen Patty says, Connor's so base for MMC. Y'all have no idea. Yeah, like when we switch between content, I'll show you the Martian Marine Corps. They are so cool. I genuinely love MMC. Yeah, the Martian Marine Corps. They're awesome from The Expanse. Catch Handle says, what do you think about how they ended the series? It was okay. You know, they kind of ended it on a cliffhanger. But again, like the alien stuff is the stuff I give a shit about the least. And some of it I think is cringe. As an example, spoilers. They go, like, there's this offshoot of the Martians who are hyper militant who go to this planet in order to colonize it through like an alien gateway. And then one of the subplots is that there's like alien dog creatures who are somehow able to overcome biology, and a kid dies and he's brought back to life by these alien dog creatures. And it's like, I couldn't give a shit less about this subplot. I really could not care less about magical dog creatures giving a zombie child life. You know what I'm saying? I'm there for railguns, ships that have to obey the laws of gravity, boarding actions with small arms, violent decompression, and using airlocks like walking the plank for pirates. That's what I'm there for. So alien dogs who are able to surpass mortality, dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life. And I wish they would cut it out of the entire TV series, especially if it was in the books. They should have cut it out of the books. They should have cut it out of the TV series. Anyways, back to the content.
All right, so now of all your questions, you have this fantasy land that Trump was like, oh, the left thinks Abrego Garcia's, I've treated him wrong. I surrender, left. Come on, what planet do you live on? No, the courts are not left or right. The courts have held. I'm thrilled that the courts have held. And it was so important for the courts to hold. So if they didn't hold on that, he was going to have unlimited authoritarian power. And we are against that. No matter how many times people try to pretend that we're on the side of Trump, listen to what I am actually saying. And you will see this every day on the Young Turks. I am against Trump. Totally. Okay. Now, okay. Yes, but why do you love Trump will be the next question. Okay.
Did I ask that? Cenk,
Okay,
talk
so
about a
now,
straw
hold
man.
on,
I
hold
mean,
on, let me-
you're making
for
up
God's
stuff
sake,
I never
Crystal, let me
said.
answer your questions.
Come
What's the
on.
point of coming on here if I can't answer your
Cenk,
questions?
I'm giving you plenty of time to answer, brother. You're making up stuff about me. I didn't say that.
Okay,
So you want to
Jesus
talk about
Christ,
straw men?
Crystal.
You're
This is
inventing
it's a
things on the
mistake
spot.
talking to you guys.
It's actually incredibly easy to let the other person talk and just say, let me know when you're done. And then they can rant forever. And guess what? The audience gets bored and they turn on the other person for boring them to death.
It's a mistake. So, okay, now, when you're talking about the Pentagon cuts,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that I thought, oh my God, Elon's such a good guy and Trump's such a good guy, even though I've spoken out against them at every single turn. And then I magically thought, oh, I bet they become liberals overnight, progressives overnight. No, you put out the Pentagon thing so that they're stuck either way. That's why Bernie and Roe joined me, because either they cut the Pentagon, we go, yes, mission accomplished. We got a tiny, tiny amount accomplished during a Trump reign, which seemed impossible. Or they don't cut the Pentagon and they add to it. And then we all come out, as I did and Bernie and Roe did, and go, see, we told you. They're hypocrites. The leaders of your party never intended to cut the Pentagon. MAGA, they were lying to you. Now,
Does
Krystal,
MAGA care, Cenk? Did that work? Did
so
MAGA
yes,
care?
they do care.
No,
They
don't.
No, okay, Krystal.
I've seen zero
that's-
pushback on the Pentagon budget. Let me just say,
Okay, can I-
because I let you go on for a little while.
Oh, I know.
There
God
were
forbid I
two-
got to
no,
answer one or
there
two
were
questions.
two-
Go ahead.
There were two tactics that were floated by me and by you in our conversation. Okay. You said, I think it's great that Elon's responding to me, Don Jr.'s responding to me. Like
Because it puts
we
them on
have
the
more,
record.
we have more of a chance. No, you said we have more of a chance with these guys to cut the Pentagon budget than we don't. And I said, nothing good's going to come out of this. And so the important thing to do is to resist the project outright, because we don't want a bunch of the richest man on the planet running our government. And so we saw how this played out.
If that's the original line of argumentation, then I understand Crystal's frustration more, because this could be reframing and cope by Cenk to say, oh, you know, I never trusted Don Jr., I never trusted Elon, I never trusted this, I never trusted that. But if in the original conversation he was saying like, okay, well, based off of their rhetoric, we have a chance to do something, then obviously Krystal would be right to be skeptical and was vindicated through her skepticism. And then Cenk is just clinging to the fact that there's elements of the base that are rebelling and are trying to hold their elected representatives to the rhetoric they were using. However, I would view this as technically a Krystal W.
Yeah,
The Pentagon,
that's
hold
right.
on.
Now-
Hold on. The Pentagon did not get cut. And actually what happened is all of the liberal and left organizing against Tesla, against the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, against Elon directly, tanked his popularity to the point that Trump felt he was a political liability and the whole project had to be scrapped.
Ooh, libs win again.
So the tactic of let's work with them and try to cut the Pentagon budget failed. The tactic of let's resist this project outright and make the case and make Elon himself politically toxic succeeded.
So
I mean, that I think she's taking a little bit too much credit. Where, let's face it, Elon kind of tanked himself, but that's okay. You know, we're political operatives. We have no idea how much impact we actually have. You wake up every single day and you just spout your nonsense and you pray that some people listen. That's the job of a pundit, and the job of a political operator is effectively to push towards the goals that you believe are good and then just hope that somebody else listens to you.
So, Krystal, we do live in two different worlds. It's fascinating to see. It's amazing to see. So, number one, the project of saying cut the Pentagon worked. Why did it work? Because they cut the Pentagon, they magically became progressives overnight? No. It worked because it showed and highlighted their hypocrisy, that they weren't going to cut the Pentagon. And now I know, I get it, guys. Especially if you're in the audience, you're not seeing it. I get it. And I'm not saying that as an insult. You're not seeing it.
So
because
you
you're not
won
engaging.
because the Pentagon budget went up, even though you thought that the Pentagon budget would get cut.
Krystal, that is obviously an oversimplification. She is being a B word. You know, I'm not going to call her a B word because this is a family show, but, you know, she's being a B word for sure. Checking in with chat because, frankly, you guys are more interesting than these pundits, but that's okay. You guys are 3,000 IQ geniuses. How else could you be any different? Herkimer says, why is there no concern about due process from the right? You want to send people back home, so be it. But how the F are we sending random guys to random concentration camps in random countries? Yeah, like Andre Hernandez, whatever his name is, the gay hairdresser. Still haven't heard shit about him. I hope that they actually reviewed his case and moved him to like a less violent prison or jail. And eventually, if he had committed no crime, released him. But I have no idea if El Salvador is doing that. Same thing with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. If he's coming back to the United States to face criminal charges, then I hope that they're not trumped up and made up in order to try to just convict him for fun. I hope he has a fair trial. So anyways, Randy Chang says, it'd be cool to be a Dune Space Guild navigator, do tons of drugs, drive cargo around the universe. True. Unless it's actually the warp and then demons consume your brain. Besides that, it would be dope. Gen X says, I'm going to go see what Pisco is talking about for a minute. Be right back. No problem, Gen X. I appreciate you. Christian Blair says, sad answer. The American people don't care about dead Africans. I mean, that's actually the truth, isn't it? Bull Media says, well, that is what Israel tells the Palestinians when they bombed, but no one cares about that it's not de-escalation, but more following of the rules of engagement. Okay. Gen X for $10. Thank you. Warming it up for Grassroots Hegemon. Indeed, but we cannot rely on Grassroots Hegemon forever. Okay. He is a very kind oiler who has helped out the chat a lot, but realistically, we're going to need chat to support. So perfect opportunity to shill. Thank you, Gen X, for the donation. Like the stream. Liking the stream is free. Engage with the VODs. Engaging with the VODs is free. Watching the videos on demand, the VODlings, or the VOD walkers, as some people have called them in chat. Both of those things are free, and they help out the channel. Alternatively, you can give a super chat. $2, $5, $10. I don't care. Money's money, money spends, and money talks. So if you have some money burning a hole in your pocket, you want to support the stream, go ahead and do a super chat. If you want to do something that's more community-based, feel free to either become a YouTube member or donate memberships. What memberships do, as far as I understand, when you give somebody a membership, is that they $2, $5, $10, whatever the level of membership is, when you gift it, that becomes theirs. They hold on to it for 30 days, and then YouTube after 30 days asks them if they want to renew. And if they enjoy the content enough, then they choose to support the channel for $2, $5, $10 a month. And then as a result, by you giving $5, you encourage someone else to give $5 to the chat or to the stream. So yeah, that's cool. St. Patty says, congrats, Connor. That's awesome. Yeah, it's been a very good day. ACAB Badasui says, I know it's AKA Badasui, but I'd choose Stargate SG-1. I wouldn't. P90s are underpowered. Gen X says, then we might have a real Republican Party again. I mean, that's what we're fighting for, right? Christian Blair says, some of them legit said Connor cares more about the corruption of Hunter and not about Trump's. No, that never happened. I'm pissed. The reason why you hear me talk about Hunter more is because when I go to the left and I say, Trump is corrupt and he's done all this messed up stuff, they go, yeah. And then when I go to the right and I say Trump is corrupt and he's done this messed up stuff, they're like, yeah, but we don't care. And then I go to the right with Hunter and they're like, yeah, Hunter is corrupt. And then when I go to the left left says, Hunter, lol, laugh my fucking ass off. And so, yeah, that pisses me off. It rubs me wrong. Nepotism, cronyism, corruption by any other name, it's fucked up. So if you're going to call out Trump and say that he's evil and corrupt, you can say it's 10,000 times worse. You can say it's 1,000 times worse. I don't give a shit. I agree with you. It's 1,000 times worse than Hunter, but it's still tax evasion and corruption and cronyism and nepotism, and it should be called out. So yeah, if you want me to not freak out about it, then just go, yeah, it's corrupt. It's fucked up. We can solve that conversation in 30 seconds. Gen X says someone will have to do disaster relief because FEMA is not. They transferred all that money to the border and immigration. Ooh, that's not going to be good. First Wave says Dave Smith mentioned. Throw up. True. All right. Hold on. Shadow 2 Bravo is a king, so I got to read him. Cenk is a genocide-denying piece of shit who named his show after guys who murdered millions of Greeks, Assyrians, and Armenians. He isn't worthy of any good faith. Well, okay. Well, then you're probably going to like Krystal Ball during this segment, aren't you? Finger guns.
Can I finish? Okay. So the reason you're not seeing it is because you're not engaging with MAGA, and that's okay. And you don't want to engage with MAGA. I got it.
Do
Okay,
you know who I am? Do you know the show I host?
I don't know if you know who you are.
Who are you talking to right now?
Okay,
I host a show with Sagar and Jetty and Emily Jasinski every day.
Okay, so Krystal,
no one in this room talks more to MAGA than I do, okay?
Yeah, okay. But okay, so are you saying that none of the MAGA voters were thrilled that they added to the Pentagon? Is that what you're saying?
They don't give a shit because Trump did it.
Elon and Trump.
No, you guys are wrong.
Elon and Trump and Don Jr., Cenk, lied to you from the beginning when they pretended like there was even a 1% chance of it. So when people told you at the time, though, resist them outright and point out that they're frauds.
Okay,
don't pretend like maybe they'll cut it. That was kind of the point.
You guys have a totally ridiculous, All right, let me not be insulting. We disagree on strategy. Okay.
Definitely.
So,
yes.
Okay. Yeah. This whole idea that you're making a difference.
Oh, look at babyface Kyle Kalinske. Look at him. He's settling into his mature adult face. I love it. Look at this. Kyle has looked like a baby forever. I know this has nothing to do with actual politics. Look at this. This is going to be funny. This is going to be cute. You're going to love it. Don't worry about it. So Kyle Kalinske has looked like this forever. Okay? He looked like a new rock metal band, not even metal, like pop rock band member bassist from 2002. That's what he's looked like. And he's looked like a kid his entire life because let's face it, like I have a little bit of a soft jaw. I got some of this going on, but he's got like a soft jaw. He's got the goatee. He's got the beard that doesn't come in all the way. He looks like a kid. And even though he looks like a little bit thick here, right? His face is still skinny and very babyish, right? And look at this. Look at Krystal Ball, right? They started hanging out. I think she was already married, but I guess she fell out of love or something like that. But Krystal, saw this little baby face and she's like, oh, you talk about progressive politics and you're so cute. And so she fell in love with Kyle the babyface. But look at this. This is old man Kyle. Are you ready for old man Kyle? Because I like old man Kyle better. You ready? Look at old man Kyle. This is 40-year-old or 50-year-old history professor, history teacher Kyle Kalinske. His face is all filled out. The fat isn't just going to his chest and his stomach anymore. It's going into his face. And so as a result, he looks like 40 or 50-year-old Kyle Kalinske. I actually love this. Good for him. He looks like a man now.
Donald Trump is listening to the left. I can't believe you guys think that. That sounds totally detached from reality.
It's not whether or not he listens to the left, Cenk. Now you're being obtuse and a moron, and I have to attack you even though I feel like you're being unfair. That's not what they're saying. They're saying that public pressure campaigns, along with the judicial system, are what's checking Trump's power, not rebels from MAGA. And the rebels from MAGA are so anemic and so ineffective that they might as well not even be there. That's what they're saying. So it feels like they're straw manning each other. That's what it feels like, to be honest.
I'll make that case in a minute.
Why is Elon Musk out? Because people burn Tesla cars? I mean, Krystal, you said that in the intro. Are you serious?
Yeah, I do think Elon hurt himself more than he was like ousted by lib left activism.
No, Elon's out because his policies were always deeply unpopular. No one wanted those cuts.
Yeah, and who pressed that case?
Them, and they're in La La Land.
Cenk, and who pressed that case? It was the left and
liberals
liberals.
in the street.
Joe Rogan hosted him on his podcast to pump him up. Joe Rogan,
guys,
think about, but Cenk, think about this. Think about this.
Unbelievable straw man.
No.
Hold on, can I just?
Let me just finish my thought here, okay? Rogan hosted Zuckerberg and Andreessen to attack the CFPB.
Of course he did.
To gut and attack the CFPB.
Bernie Sanders progressive overnight?
No,
Are you insane? No, guys.
Are you insane? You were the one who apparently thought that. Cenk, if anything is going to be populist, hold on, Cenk. Let me finish a thought. If anything, if the populist right stands for anything, you would think it would be an anti-scam bureau that is wildly effective. But no, and actually stood up against debanking conservatives. But no, What did Rogan do? And what did they cheer for with Elon with the chainsaw? Completely gutting not only the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Trump gutting the National Labor Relations Board, but them defenestrating the ability of this government to enforce white-collar crime at all. Did MAGA care? No, they didn't. The only people that held them to account were left and liberals who organized against that, and yes, successfully made Elon so toxic that he ultimately crashed out of the administration.
I want to make a point about what the line of argumentation is and why they're going to keep arguing past each other. It's because both of these guys 6 months ago, a year ago, were talking about how there's like this beautiful horseshoe going on in politics where the right wing is talking about like economic issues and the working class and the middle class. And there was this hope that they would be able to recruit MAGA people who cared about economics into progressivism. I think that since those conversations were being had maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, what happened was Krystal and Kyle got cynical about it. And they said, no, that's not actually going to work out. And these people are just Trump cultists. So as a result, we need to go ahead and embrace the liberals in order to try to bolster the Republic against what Trump is about to do. That's the line of argumentation that I'm hearing right now. I haven't tracked their content enough in order to know if that's actually the case, but I think that's what's going on. So they said, let's ally with the institutionalists. Whereas what Cenk is arguing is he doesn't want to ally with Trump himself or the admin or Steve Bannon, but he still wants to try to appeal to the populist right in order to recruit them on goals that they share with the populist left. And Krystal is just saying, you're being taken for a ride. That's what I'm hearing. That's my summary of the argumentation.
That's what happened.
So, and then Cenk is resisting that because he fucking hates brunch liberals. That's what's going on.
Let me try explaining it this way and see if I can get through to you guys. So you keep telling me all the things that Trump did wrong. Of course he did. So I'm saying that it's a given that he's always going to do, for example, 90% of things massively wrong. And in the other 10% that he plans to do wrong, I'm saying we have a fighter's chance if we ally and we show hypocrisy or we get allies. It's a win-win either way, okay? So for example, in opposing the war, either they become our allies and somehow at some point we stop this war, or we show, oh, you guys never meant it. Now you're the pro-war party, which makes us much more likely to win over independents and win the next election. But as I say that, you keep framing it as if I agree with them 90%, and where I think that I'm going to flip them overnight on the 90% where we disagree. No, there's no chance of that. So you can stop asking that question. They're not going to move on cutting the budget, and they're not going to listen that, hey, you know what, you shouldn't cut the malaria treatment in Africa, you shouldn't cut the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, because every dollar we spend there, we get back $20, etc. But if you go with your maximalist approach, guys, and you say, all right, I'm fighting you in a maximum way, so that means I'm never going to agree with you, I'm going to insult you at every turn, I'm not going to listen to you. So when you come in and you go, hey, guys, let's ally against the war, or maybe did you think that Elon's and I said this in every right-wing talk show that I did, and I said it at the Charlie Kirk event, I said, remember, beware of your own donors like Elon Musk. And then eventually they got aware of their own donors. Now, did they do it magically and overnight? No, it was mainly a fight between Elon and Trump, right?
Yes,
it was their
of
egos.
course. It had nothing to do with Charlie Kirk.
The reason they are unpopular is not because the left's maximalist approach of yelling fascist at every Trump.
Ooh, I got to pause because I know there's going to be a good soundbite here. So I'm going to engage with chat a little bit, play it, and then I'm going to react to it. Si se puede says Dave Smith already told Tim Pool yesterday he takes back saying he regretted voting for Trump. Laughed my ass off. Yeah, dude, what? I hate Dave Smith as much as I can hate anybody in politics. Like, listen, if Dave Smith wanted to smoke a J out behind a bar at 11 p.m. and we could yap about politics, I would hang out with Dave Smith. Besides that, I think he's so useless as a political commentator. General Balsack says there's such a misunderstanding of the War Powers Act of 73. Yeah, probably. I don't even understand it because I haven't read it here. Randy Chang says I lost the plot here. What are they trying to talk Cenk into? Well, I actually did just summarize that, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that one. Scrolling. Krystal is as well. First Wave says this is obviously bad faith. Just let people explain their positions. Yeah, but dangerous levels of smug, says ACAB Badasoy. The point is that they're both presuming that the other one is being naive. And I don't think either one of these people are naive. I think that Krystal is more correct that it's the Lib Left Alliance that is a stronger alliance to actually fight the Trump agenda than Cenk. But I also think that plurality of tactics, right? There are going to be some people who are going to say, oh yeah, MAGA did do messed up stuff. Let's fight them on this part of it. And so Cenk fighting for that, I think, is noble, even if I think that it's silly. Affect says, I think Cenk is bad faith very often, to be honest. This feels like two actors playing to an audience. Yeah, but that's political punditry. I don't do that. I would never play to my 3,000 IQ well-endowed audience. I would never flatter your ego so you feel like this is a fun place to be, so you hang out and have fun and end up growing my chat. I would never do that. I would never flatter your ego. Mega Zero says, it doesn't matter how right you are. If you're being an a-hole, no one will care about what you say. Well, don't tell me that. I'm an a-hole all the time. Griffin says, classic rage bait tactics. Get them emotional and you win. Right. And Griffin, I don't know if you heard me say this earlier, but I feel like 70% of the people who consume online politics, they do not pay attention to the actual arguments being made and the concepts being argued. They're totally vibe-based. They just go off of who's more triggered and who is more calm, cool, and collected. Or if somebody is triggered, did they do an awesome, cool, based Giga Chad angry rant, or did they do a cringe, soy, loser, angry, triggered rant? It depends. Spider-Man says, hey, lovely people. Hope you're doing well and taking care of yourselves. We are. We're having fun taking psychic damage. Razzle Smasher says, Krystal is definitely being smug, but she's not wrong. Cenk is being a walking aneurysm as usual, about to burst. Well, that happens.
Voters working. It's because their policies are deeply unpopular.
And who explains that their policies are deeply unpopular? The left and liberals are the ones that highlight how deeply unpopular those policies are. So that's where the credit belongs.
Like I do. So
right, but that's not like Joe Rogan does, right? Joe Rogan doesn't do that. Charlie Kirk doesn't do that. They don't do that.
Said how unpopular they are.
Yeah, but my point is, Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk don't do that, Cenk. They're not allies. Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk don't do that. Steve Bannon doesn't do that. Sloppy Steve goes and gives Trump a hand job every day.
Rude, Kyle. Rude.
That's the point, is that they're not allies.
Sloppy Steve. That's a crazy nickname.
And by the way, even on the Iran war thing, they're lying. They are lying. We literally have the quotes right here. Charlie Kirk is already backpedaling. Quote, we must trust Trump in this situation. Steve Bannon, if Trump ultimately decides to bomb Iran's nuclear sites, MAGA would come around. That's not me speaking. That's Steve Bannon. The vast majority of the MAGA movement will go, look, we trust your judgment. We don't like it. In fact, we may hate it, but we'll get on board. Tucker Carlson called Trump and apologized, and he also said on his podcast with Steve Bannon, quote, I like Israel. I don't talk about Gaza because my audience got mad at me. He said, quote, watching Donald Trump, who at his core is sincere about peace, I feel for President Trump, and he just has to roll with it. That is not true. What he's saying is not true. These are not allies. They will immediately start moving the goalposts as soon as Trump starts bombing Iran.
Here we go again.
You're going to get this. You're going to get, oh, he's getting bad advice.
But is Cenk's argument going to be he's trying to appeal to the voters in the 2 or 3 principled people in the space, like, I know you're going to laugh, but Joe Rogan, Thomas Massey, Rand Paul.
From the neocons around him. It's not a big deal. It's a limited attack. It's defensive. It's not offensive. This isn't like Iraq. There are no boots on the ground. The only people who are sincere that I will grant you, Cenk, is libertarians. So Thomas Massey and Dave Smith, because libertarians have a track record like Ron Paul did of being very principled. But everybody in MAGA, or 99% of them, will bend the knee. Just like 99% of the ones in Congress have already bent the knee. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's saying things that are against the war, she's ultimately not signing on to the bill to block the war.
Okay, so here we go again. So again, 90-10, guys. The framing of that question makes this sound like I think Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson have.
He doesn't need to say that. As a matter of fact, this is my recommendation. I understand these people have been pundits longer than me, and they have a more established audience than me. But I feel like I've been in Twitch and YouTube politics longer, and therefore I understand the debate scene. In a debate like this, simplify the point. Okay, you've already repeated yourself half a dozen times, and I get that it's hard to do in the moment. So that's not a criticism of whether or not you can do this in the moment, but you need to think about this. Simplify your point. Cenk should, in this moment, say, guys, I've said it 10 times. I'm not going after the hardcore Trump simps. I'm going after the 2 or 3 principled people who will stand up to Trump. And I'm going after MAGA voters. I've heard him say this half a dozen times. So if Cenk wants to simplify that message, make it 2 or 3 sentences. I'm not talking about hardcore Trump simps. I'm talking about the 2 or 3 principled leaders and the hundreds of thousands of people who do not like what Trump is doing. And I'm trying to appeal to them on a limited basis. I've said this 10 times now. I don't know how you guys aren't hearing what I'm saying. Even if you disagree with it, at least acknowledge what I said and stop talking past it. That's what I would say if I was Cenk. Checking in with chat, because again, you guys are smarter than what we're watching. Conservative Liberalism says, Cenk is smart enough to see that the Bernie-Trump crossover and wants to hold the populace accountable instead of letting them bend with the wind. If you think that's a bad course of action, you're wrong. Conservative Liberalism, I agree with you. I also agree with a plurality of tactics. Krystal and Kyle can freak out on their show and call everybody a fascist and say that Steve Bannon is giving Donald Trump a hand job. That'll appeal to liberals and leftists. It's not going to appeal to any MAGA people or any conservatives or any libertarians. And then Cenk can say, hey, listen, we agree on this 10% of policy. Let's work together on that 10% of policy. And that will appeal to some people in MAGA, conservatives, and libertarians. Conservative liberalism. Yeah. I'm not going to, when you guys are adding each other in chat, I'm going to not read those because then I jump in the middle of a fight and then I make it weird. Conservative liberalism says, if you want to disown them and be smug, you're losing at politics. I don't know if that's true. I think smugness has a certain level of tactical utility, but you have to be smug on a topic where the other side is losing if you're going to be politically effective. Bull Media says, the achievements are all the alternative media getting so much money over this admin. Yep. ACAB Badasui, the only thing that I've heard of which would be impactful is hydrothermal depolymerization. Holy shit, that's a mouthful. Which in theory can produce billions of barrels of hydrocarbon by breaking down all sorts of carbon waste based. Herkimer says, am I a neocon? Yep. Welcome to the club, friend. Bull Media says we can't have democracies everywhere. There needs to be autocracies like China so we have cheap goods. Well, now you're appealing. Now you're appealing to my sense of loving Funko Pops. General Ballsack says, Expanse ruined my sci-fi concept. Expanse is good stuff, though. Yeah, it's good. Gen X says, Pisco is watching a debate between Josiah and Ryan Mullally, annoying MAGA lawyer Destiny talk to in NY. Yeah, I like Ryan. Ryan's a good dude, though. Sin Patty says, Connor, you finally had a take I disagree with. The alien stuff is pretty cool, but I do agree the hard military stuff is way cooler. Yeah, sorry. I don't like alien dogs that heal zombie children. It's very boring to me. Kazra, my Iranian friend, says, Connor, I can't understand how Israeli controlled the U.S. Can you explain how people come to this conclusion? I always thought U.S. makes the final call and Israel moves in the USA's interest. Yeah, so Kazra, the argument really quick, and by the way, this is, I love Kazra, so, you know, my Iranian friend. The argument, as a matter of fact, I'm going to full screen real quick. I love you guys. Stay here. Don't go anywhere. Okay? We're going to have a quick geopolitical segue in order to break up the content because, frankly, I'm taking a lot of psychic damage this morning. So the argument is that Europe wiped out a third of the international Jewish population in World War II. Okay, so there were like 6 million Jews in Europe, and a lot of them, well, actually there was more, and a lot of them got wiped out. And a lot of people, Israelis, moved 2 places, okay? They moved to the United States, or they moved to Israel. Israel wasn't founded until 48, but they moved to Palestine in order to establish the state of Israel, right? And so the argument has been that in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, there are wildly influential Jews in foreign policy. I think Henry Kissinger is a Jew, for example. Nixon also complained about Jewish influence in AIPAC and all that kind of stuff. I think there was even some talk about AIPAC beefing with the Kennedy administration. But the point is that there were always Jews in the United States who were sympathetic to the state of Israel. And this was rooted, in my opinion, in the horrors of the Holocaust. They viewed the state of Israel as necessary in order to preserve the Jewish population. And as a result, there was a rewriting of the narrative of what Judaism meant to the Western world. Up until World War II, in my opinion, Christian people who follow Christ, their anti-Semitism was rooted in the fact that Jews were a vestigial religion. I've argued this before. Vestigial means like redundant, like your people brought this up in chat. Your appendix. Your appendix is a redundant vital organ that can kill you. So they argued that the Jews are redundant and therefore don't need to exist. Therefore, we can treat them like shit. It's not very Christian of them, but that was the line of argumentation that they went with. And so a lot of people treated Jews like shit. Well, after we wiped out a third of their population, we being Europeans, we kind of felt a little bad, felt a little bad. And so we helped out the state of Israel, probably partially because we had Jewish friends who were telling us to, and then also because we felt guilty about World War II. But now that the state of Israel is established and it's an economic power, a military power, it has a very vibrant military industrial complex. It has a very vibrant tech sector. It has a very vibrant entrepreneurial sector. The question is whether or not it's control, where the United States of America controls Israel or Israel controls the United States, or if it's aligned interest. And I think most people who aren't schizophrenics believe it's a little bit of both, right? Sometimes the tail wags the dog, sometimes the dog wags the tail, and realistically, it's probably more aligned interest than it is some like conspiracy where the Jews like, I've been watching a lot of Disney TV shows recently. So have you seen Aladdin where Jafar has like the snake staff and he like puts it up to the Sultan's face and then like it mesmerizes the Sultan into doing what Jafar wants him to do? I don't think the Jews are able to do that. You know, I don't think they have like a mesmerizing stick where they mesmerize the United States into supporting Israel. I think it's aligned interest. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I tried. All right, sorry. Back to the content. I just like I like interesting geopolitical diatribes along with my brain damage.
Good intent. And my God, they're ready to rebel on everything against.
Raizel says, no, I hate Trump more. And I'm going to argue with him. No, I hate Trump more.
Donald Trump.
I said Iran.
No.
I said Iran.
And I just answer a question.
But I didn't say that. I said Iran.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. So I think that obviously 90% of the influencers, the hosts, etc., are going to stick with Trump 100%, right? Well, I wouldn't even say 90%. I'd say, 75% or so. Are they going to kiss his ass on everything? Well, of course they are. They're on the right, and their whole ecosystem is based on kissing politicians and leaders' asses. Now, let's be honest, not us and not you guys, but MSNBC and now a lot of online hosts on the left, their job is to kiss the Democratic ass, and they say, oh, yeah, Joe Biden was young and dynamic, etc. So, yes, we have the partisans, and they are, by definition, always going to stick with one side is great, the other side is the devil, okay? So now when you get to the 25% of hosts, because now the reason I moved it from 10 to 25, because you're including Rogan, etc. So is Rogan the same as Steve Bannon? If you think he is, that's just totally wrong. Now, do they agree on a lot of things? Yes. Do they agree on everything? No. Does Steve Bannon write about most things? No, he's horribly, horribly wrong about most things. So will they, when Trump says heal, will they heal? In the beginning, yes, and that's exactly what you're seeing. But the reason they're having to heal is because they started rebelling in the first place. And Trump got mad, and everybody else got mad. And even today, you just go on any website. So Bannon is saying, don't go to war. It's terrible. Is he then saying, oh, Donald Trump? Of course he is, because he's on that side. And did we see?
Of course.
A lot of left-leaning hosts go, oh, well, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are corporate guys and they're bad, but we have to go with them anyway. Yes, we did. But look, you have to be honest about what's actually happening. So if you guys are saying, I'm not trying to strawman you guys like you did, in my opinion, in the framing of every question. So I'm asking you, are you really, you're saying it's all fake and you think that all these right-wing hosts are not actually anti-war, that this is, but they've been telling their audience now for months that the war is a terrible. Let me ask the question, and that the war is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. But how would that strategy work? So they get their.
You're good. Well, he should stop, ask the question, and let them answer. But I have to answer Starhawks. Starhawks, pretending to care so deeply for people in countries halfway around the world is so cringe and performative. We help those countries because it benefits U.S. hegemony. Okay. Full screen time. I have traveled a large portion of the world, okay? I was born in New England, moved to Florida, moved to Belgium, lived in Belgium for 3 or 4 years, moved to Texas, moved back to Florida, enlisted in the Marine Corps, went to Japan, went to Iraq, went to California, came home, and then I've moved 2 or 3 times since being home, but mostly I've been in Central Florida. And I've also been during those travels, there was also like little stops in different places. And I've met all kinds of people, Africans, Middle Eastern, North Africans, Asians, Northern Europeans, Mediterraneans, Tongans. I love Tongans. I've met all sorts of crazy people. And so the thing about it is, because I'm old and I'm a father, I know the amount, I know that people are people. So even if you have a different God, even if you have a different stance on politics, we can fight and kill each other over that, right? Like I love that the United States spent the 20th century killing communists. I love that it spent the early 20th century killing fascists. I don't love that it spent the early 21st century killing jihadists, because let's face it, geopolitical intrigue in reference to petroleum has made it so we have to kill jihadists. And I don't even like that jihadists exist. It's actually kind of fucked up. But anyways, I don't care that we've been killing these people, right? So you're right that there's like a sociopathic cutoff where I don't care about human beings at some point if you're the wrong ideology. It just happens. It's like a political calculus. However, I'm also a human being and a father, and I know the love that I have for my child, right? I know the love that I have for my family, my wife, my kids, my community, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I know that there is an African woman who she's not, I could make all sorts of racist fucked up jokes, but I'll pass for now. But she has done nothing wrong. She just exists, and she lives in a fucked up society that's poor and not particularly industrious. And we have the capacity to, number one, encourage their society to be more industrious so they can build up their economy, so they can become a richer, wealthier, more successful society. And then 2, we can give them medical care for like 8 cents a day that makes it so she doesn't have to watch her child die from a preventable disease like HIV and then getting a cold as a child. I do care about that, because I do. It's not like an extrapolation for me. It's not something ephemeral. It's not Narnia. Like, since I've been to these places and I've seen these kinds of people, I can imagine a mother taking care of a young child in a different part of the world that is different than mine. And if I can spend 8 cents a day in taxes and $36 a year as a taxpayer to make sure that that woman doesn't have to watch her child die, that's a worthwhile use of my tax dollars. That's infinitely better than just blowing people up with cool technology. I love cool technology. I love the military industrial complex. I love GBU 57s. I love lasers on AC 130s that can blast jihadist faces off with laser beam technology. That's cool. But I also wouldn't mind spending $36 per year in order to prevent a child from dying of AIDS. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, kill jihadists, save AIDS babies. These things are not contradictory. I like both.
Their audience totally against the war, then they capitulate to Trump.
Let me tell you how that strategy works.
How did that help them be
Let me see. Let me see how. Let me explain. Let me explain how that strategy works.
My answer to your question is yes, by the way. In 99% of cases, they are just lying, and they'll go and suck Trump off again.
So let me.
I think one of our biggest problems is presuming that all of our political opponents are lying when chances are they're just they're like delusional or self-delusional.
That's a real disagreement.
They're already backing off, and the war didn't even start yet. We didn't even bomb the nuclear sites yet. They're already backing off.
How this strategy works. Okay, they postured as anti-war because they thought it was a good electoral strategy. So now they have some track record laid of claiming that Trump is the pro-peace candidate. Blah blah blah.
And why was it a good strategy?
And
because their voters are anti-war.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Okay, the polling is wildly at odds with you, Cenk, on that. We can come back to that in a second. But okay, so they this is the pro-peace ticket, whatever. And I think there were a lot of independents actually who were swayed by that anti-war message, which was completely at odds with reality and with Trump's first term. I think we all agree with that. Okay, so I think there were independent voters who were swayed by that. Charlie Kirk and others now, to maintain some credibility, they have to postulate, oh, you know, Trump is getting pulled into this and the neocons are tricking him and confusing him, et cetera.
It's never his fault.
But we already know how this plays out because it's already played out. Trump called Tucker kooky and said he needs to get a TV network, basically saying he's a has-been. Tucker called him to apologize. That was the message, not just to Tucker, but to everybody else. Time to bend the knee, time to get on board. And they did. They did.
Yeah.
So we don't have to guess. It's already happened. It's already played out. Right, They've already bent the knee.
Okay, so we're now actually approaching an actual disagreement rather than the one that was foisted upon me that I don't like. So, all right. So, guys, you think that all these guys and their voters are all liars and that they're not actually.
I don't know why you lump in the voters because
I'm talking about the voters.
Okay, well, let's talk about
the voters.
Talk about the voters then. Let me ask you. Let me ask you a really simple question. Let me ask you a really simple question about the voters.
Yeah, well, you of course you like the Trump and the Republicans.
Which
you trust them? No, I don't. Stop saying it.
Cenk,
you said
let me ask a really basic question.
37 to 1 vote. You said how many Republicans voted
one.
War powers? I said one, Tom Massey, and you kept going like, oh, did you know that they didn't? I said yeah. I said I
because they're fake.
So
but
yes,
Cenk,
their voters.
Let me ask you this question.
That their voters are not anti-war at all. So be clear.
So let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question.
Why wouldn't you just answer his question real quick and say, yeah, there's some anti-war voters, but a healthy chunk of them will just go along with the cult of MAGA? Easy answer.
Or anti-war.
Let me ask you this question.
Are you saying they're actually liars?
Let me ask you this question. Which base, the Democratic Party base or the Republican Party base, which one do you think is more opposed right now to war with Iran? Which one?
The left. It's not even close.
It's not even close. Exactly. That's the.
So you can still, but at the same time, Krystal, if 30% of the right doesn't want any kind of conflict with Iran, you can still appeal to that 30%. This feels very elementary. Like God help me for having to steelman Cenk in this conversation.
That's the point. And so if you are going to build, if you're going to build a grassroots people-powered movement with bodies in the streets to oppose war, where do you need to go for those numbers? The left.
Okay.
Because
shut up, Krystal. You know exactly what the fudge he was saying, which is you can still appeal to the 20 to 30% of people who are opposed to the war in Iran. You already know this. This is actually to the point where I feel like this is borderline like bad faith. I don't like using the term bad faith. As soon as I hear the word bad faith, my brain shuts off because people use it so cringe in debates where effectively if somebody disagrees with you, then they're like, that's bad faith. That's bad faith. I'm not trying to use it in that way. I'm saying that Krystal knows how electoral politics works, which is effectively people walk into booths and they check boxes next to ideas. And so if there are anti-war Republican voters to a margin of 2 to 1, then you can appeal to that one and you can say, the MAGA coalition has betrayed you. They said they didn't want any new wars. They said they didn't want to spend billions or trillions of dollars on the military industrial complex. They said they didn't want to get into the intrigues of the Middle East and North Africa, and they betrayed your trust. instead of voting for another MAGA dipstick or another Republican neocon, then vote for this progressive or liberal who has been staunchly anti-war and on top of that voted in favor of being anti-war. And that's not going to work with every conservative. It's not going to work with every libertarian. It's not going to work with every conservatarian. And out of the 30% of people who are opposed to conflict with Iran, you might only get a third of them or a sixth of them to change their vote. But it is still worthwhile, particularly when electoral politics boils down to less than 2% of the population. So Krystal pretending she doesn't understand this in order to get dunks on Cenk, I feel like is obtuse, is the best way that I could phrase it. JL for $5. Thank you for the super chat, King. Very much appreciated. Thanks for the content. Good luck on Valor Media growth. Well, listen, we started at 10. We're bouncing between 80 and 100, and life is good. Life is gosh dang good. And we are still at the very beginning of this channel. So I'm a happy camper.
They're already there with you. And by the way, the MAGA base, the minute that Trump says we're in a war with Iran, they are going to overwhelmingly back him because they have already. Every single time.
You have the numbers already. So
yeah, so put up.
It's 2-1.
Put up 8. This is element 8, I believe.
Bud123 says Krystal Ball and Kyle Kulinski are essentially resistance liberals. Dude, that is so insulting because they spent so much time in the 24 election trying to be the giga progressives, trying to yank Democrats over to a progressive message that I am insulted on their behalf. Herkimer says, chill. Bro was a big Backstreet Boys fan too. No joke. That's dope. That's actually dope. Let's read this before they read it. Do you support or oppose the United States providing offensive weapons to help Israel strike Iranian military targets? 80% support, 17% oppose. Okay, problem. Most people in the United States support Israel. Do you support or oppose the United States taking its own direct military action if necessary to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons? Support versus oppose. Yeah, 72% support. So that's what, a 3-1? So you're proving Cenk's point, which is he's trying to appeal to the 1 out of 4 people. There's nothing wrong with Cenk's position. God help me.
For us, these are the poll numbers. Now, there are other polls out there, I grant you, but this is among Trump.
Hunter, so LB says things just to make me angry. Hunter had due process, Connor. No one I know defends Hunter Biden criminality. Yeah, they do. Talk to DGG. They love it. They love defending Hunter Biden's criminality just to piss me off. By the way, Hunter was never in government, so who cares about a washed-up junkie? I care because he was the son of the secretary. Well, was he the secretary of state? No, he was the son of the vice president, and he was the son of the president, and he was peddling influence while his father was an influential senator and while his father was vice president of the United States. So, yeah, I care about it, okay? I care about it.
Trump 2024 voters. You ask them, do you support or oppose the U.S. providing offensive weapons to help Israel strike Iranian military targets? What we're doing now, 79% support. Do you support or oppose the U.S. taking its own direct military action, if necessary, to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons? That's exactly the framing that Trump is using right now. Support 72%. They are more pro-war. So are there some who, don't want to get in another foreign entanglement? Sure. But overwhelmingly, are they going to back an Iran war? Are they already backing an Iran war because Trump said so? 100%.
Okay, so let's establish who we're talking about. So when you talk about Trump and the Republican politicians, 99% of them are liars. They're going to be pro-war. They're going to do all the terrible things that we're against, that we are all against, including me. Okay. Now, when you move to the media, I'm out on a limb, and I get it. If you grant them an inch, people will say, okay, that's it. You love them, and you're a Trump supporter, et cetera. But I'm doing it anyway because I'm being honest. I think 75% of them are unreachable, but 25% of them, at a minimum, actually will listen to you, have their own audience pushing them to be anti-war. They're not with us on all issues. They're not with us on most issues. But on war, I think
he said this 12 times. I'm actually, thank God we only have a few minutes left of this because I genuinely feel like Kyle and Krystal just brought him on for a struggle session.
That a significant chunk of them are with us. Okay, so when you go to Charlie Kirk's audience, for example, why is Charlie Kirk even dipping his toe into the waters?
Sorry. I'm scrolling through chat while I'm listening, and Rob, R-A-W-B, said something brilliant. The Lunchable folks should release Brunchables, brunch for kids. Dude, imagine having like a white grape, you know, like white wine, but you have like, I don't know what white wine is made out of, what kind of grapes, because there's like red grapes, right? And then there's green grapes. Is there another kind of grape? I have no idea. But anyways, the point is you could have like a white grape juice spritzer with various breakfast foods. That would be hilarious. I love that. Bull Media says, what is brunch anyways? The concept felt stupid to me. It's a boozy 11 a.m. breakfast mixed with lunch. Rich people, rich wine moms do it every day. They literally wake up at 9. They get prim and proper. They put on their, you know, fanciest Lululemon yoga gear, and then they go out with the girls to a brunch spot and they get wasted at 11 a.m. Good for them, by the way. However, brunch liberals, the people who actually have 9 to 5s, they just do that on Sundays.
Of opposing Trump's policy on Iran and then quickly rushing back out.
First Wave says, sometimes I get the feeling that people like Cenk emotionally hate libs more than MAGA. They do. It's like, number one, it's the narcissism of small differences, but he does view them as traitors to the military industrial complex, to military adventurism, to neoconservatism, to mixed economy capitalism. He does view them as backstabbers of progressivism, 100%.
Rushing back out is obvious. They're ass kissers, right? So the question is, why did he dip his toe in the first place? Because he did a poll of his own audience, and his audience said 90-10 do not help Israel go to war with Iran. 90-10. That's his audience, okay? So now you move to the last category, which are the voters themselves. That is where I am most hopeful that they actually are anti-war. Now, does that mean 100% of them are anti-war? No, not at all, okay? But I think a solid 50% of Trump voters, remember, a lot of them are independents, or a lot of them are in somewhere in the spectrum. At least 50% of them are actually anti-war. So what I'm seeing is all over social media, all over the right-wing shows, their own base in an uprising. Why do you think Charlie Kirk, Tucker, and Bannon are doing those things? They're almost all of them are saying on their own shows, well, you guys are pushing me to do this, you know, and yeah, I hear you guys. We were supposed to be anti-war, right? Now, they're gonna, guys, since this is like the first 6 months, are they gonna go run back to daddy? Of course they're gonna run back to daddy, right? So what we're trying to do is not turn all of them against all of Trump's policies instantly, because that is wildly unrealistic.
I know it's boring because they're repeating themselves, but I'm going to let them wrap it up, okay? And then I'll respond to the end. I'll summarize it. I'll engage with chat, and we'll move into the next segment. But this was just a struggle session in order to make Cenk bend the knee to the enlightened progressives who, instead of trying to work with MAGA, they went back to the liberal establishment. That's all it is. It's just Krystal and Kyle saying, we were smart enough to go back to the lib establishment in order to resist MAGA, and you were so stupid because you kept insisting that you could reach out to MAGA people in order to try to get them to resist Trump. It's a plurality of tactics. It's not even that big of a deal, to be honest.
We're trying to show, either flip them or show hypocrisy to the voters that you can reach on the issues where they agree with us. There aren't that many, but war is one of them with half of his base. So you guys think that if the left wing does a maximalist approach and we yell at those people, that those voters are going to interpret it as, oh my God, they were right. Since they're yelling at me, I will now go to their side. My strategy is go on those shows to talk to their audience and say, look, I'm not trying to trick you. I think you guys actually, a lot of you are actually anti-war. And I'm anti-war. And guys, you'd be surprised that they don't think the left is anti-war at all. They would have the same exact conversation in reverse. They would ask incredulously, who do you think is more anti-war, left or right? And they would all say right, and that the left is more pro-war. And I'm like, no, guys, no, we're totally anti-war. So Dave Smith and I did.
Yeah, but they would cite Ukraine because liberals are pro-Ukraine. That's exactly what's going on. So Yeah, sorry, this doesn't work.
Coalition. Dave Smith did a great job on your show. Breaking Points, fantastic. I agree with you. Libertarians are the first to peel off. And great, look, we peeled off the libertarians on the issue of war. Perfect. And we're doing a website, unitedagainstwar.com, where I'm inviting allies. And if it turns out only the libertarians come and the right wing does not come, okay, then that's what happened. So now, if you're saying that no revolt happened at all, it was all fake, all the media guys were fake, 100% of them, and all the voters were fake, 100% of them, and they all actually love war. Okay, that's a straw man. I don't think you're saying that. But you got to tell me what you are saying. Are you saying that none of their voters are anti-war, or a big chunk, or a small chunk, and that if we?
Oh my God!
But I want to ask you: when Trump does bomb Iran, do you think the number among Republicans will stay at only 50% supporting it, or is it going to go up to 70 or 80%? Hey guys, this is just a little piece of an hour-long debate that Krystal and I did with Cenk Uygur about the best path forward and how to resist rising fascism in this country and Trumpism. It got very heated at different points. We have clear differences in ideas.
Did they cut out the fascism point, or was I paying too much attention to chat? I don't know. I might have missed the fascism talking point. That's okay. That's okay. Let's go ahead and summarize that real quick, and then I'm going to engage with chat. So what I would say is, in reference to that conversation, it was effectively a struggle session. That's all it is. It's actually a pretty simple struggle session. Effectively, what's going on is about 2 years ago, I would say progressives started wondering, because they had some economic overlap with right-wing talking points coming from Trump, and they were curious about whether or not they would be able to peel away any MAGA people in order to be sympathetic, maybe not with progressivism in general, but with like progressive policies at least, because obviously there's like an overlap between like Bernie bros and MAGA. Matter of fact, after Bernie bros lost Bernie, they split over whether or not they were supporting MAGA or whether or not they were supporting another Democrat, which was interesting because Trump did talk about economic issues. And so what happened was Cenk went with what's probably a losing bet, which is trying to convince Republicans, trying to convince MAGA that progressives can offer them, if not like decent political candidates, they can at least offer them decent policies. And Krystal Ball and Kyle Kulinski apparently came up with the strategy of, well, we're just going to go back to the institutionalist libs. I think they're correct. I think the institutionalist libs and the left are who is genuinely resisting the Trump movement. I think that's who is actually genuinely resisting. And I feel like the MAGA rebels are so few and so quiet that they're not very effective. However, all that was a struggle session to make Cenk look bad. What are you going to do? All right. Goodbye, guys. Have a good one. Enjoy your other favorite streamers. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.